Greeting friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barcy. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students to retirees and anywhere in between. Today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Savannah June. Savannah has 15 years of experience in high-risk obstetrical care. Her experience includes labor and delivery, antepartum, maternal child home care, sexual assault nurse examiner, maternal fetal medicine, and legal nurse consulting. She says she's passionate about patient advocacy and OB education. So, welcome, Savannah.
Thanks so much for having me.
It is my great pleasure. You have quite a few interests.
I do.
And that's the beauty of nursing, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I just keep finding more. Each year I just am able to take, my career into another direction. So
Yeah,
we'll see what
indeed.
this next one brings.
Indeed, indeed. But why initially? What made you become a nurse?
I always loved science and I loved serving people.
Okay.
And I thought it was really cool to be able to use my knowledge and love of science to serve people. And I think that the area that I love to serve people the most is like during their best days of their life or their worst days of their life. And I think that I'm kind of like a life experiences nurse. Like I love both sides of it. I loved hospice when I first started as like a graduate nurse. So I loved being there on, like the last day and serving and caring for those people and caring for their families. And then I loved the beginning stages of life. Bringing a new baby into this world is something that like it's usually the best day of your life, but it could easily be the worst too.
Yeah.
And I've been there for those families on the worst day. And those are actually some of my favorite patients to take care of, just because I feel like I can use my gift of, nursing to really serve them and to be there for them on those days. So, I love my ability to do that as a nurse and encompass, other areas of my life into that. So
Yeah, 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 and it's so cool that you say that actually, because both of those experiences are the best and the worst actually defy words. There are no real words that you can actually use or that I can actually use to adequately express what that experience is like. So
yeah.
it's huge that you say that. It's huge that you say that. So if you weren't a nurse, what would you be?
Um
Oh, okay, so your nursing was it.
I like baking. I'm a really good baker. I would maybe have my daughter and she's 10, we have our own like gluten-free bakery that we sell baked
Yeah,
goods. So maybe I would do something like that. Um,
yes, yeah.
some of my other hobbies are like thrift shopping. So
Aha.
I find like like old things that need like refurnishing and
Mm-hmm.
putting new
Mm-hmm.
life. And
Mm-hmm.
for a while, like during COVID, I just needed something to kind of help with like my creativity. And so I would buy like old designer purses and add like fringe to them and paint them and clean them up and then sell them. And
Mm-hmm.
so I made a lot of money doing that. So I'll always find something like creative to do, but um I guess I hadn't ever thought about like not being a nurse. It kind of becomes
Mm-hmm.
your identity after a while.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's kind of why I asked that, because you said you always wanted. So there's clearly there was no plan B. So this is
Mhm.
it. This is the path
Yeah,
I'm going down. That's
yeah.
it. So when you became a nurse, though, because we just talked about you always wanting to do it, and the other things that you do really are kind of on the periphery. When you became a nurse, was it what you thought it was going to be?
No. Mm-mm. No, and it was kind of baptism by fire. Like, you know, you just I got a job as a nurse intern in a tertiary care center, very high risk OB, and probably for the first 3 months of my internship, my preceptor thought I was just like a high school student that was like there to help. So I didn't really get like any great experience as an intern. And then they were like, oh, you're a nurse? Like you graduated? Okay, here, just take it all. And so then I learned a lot just because you just get kind of thrown into this
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
fire. And um I was on a pretty tough unit. I think labor and delivery nurses are kind of known uh, as, I'm just going to say it, bullies sometimes, but it's because we're so autonomous in our work and so protective of our patients that I think that it can be just kind of like a tough area when you're surrounded by that much estrogen and so um I got a really great orientation by some very experienced nurses. Like they had been there for 30 plus years, and I had 5 different preceptors. And so I got just like some really great knowledge. And then I got thrown to night shift, and it was just a really wild ride that I just wasn't prepared for. But you know, you survive, and hopefully at some point there you can thrive. And I did.
You will
So
thrive. You will thrive. You will thrive. I'm laughing because we blame testosterone for a lot of things, but here you go
mm,
blaming estrogen. It's like,
estrogen. Yeah, that can be
okay.
that can
So
be tough.
with all of that, so you know you did the internship thing, you had the focus, you started in a really what could be a really tough area. What would you like to see change?
I would like to see a better transition from nursing school to real life. I think that hospitals are cutting programs like nurse residencies that are proven to help with that transition, to support those nurses, to give them the education that they need. And I would like to see a smoother transition there. I've thought about um, offering a like course or
Hmm.
like mentorship to new
Hmm.
L&D nurses to
Hmm.
um to just be like that sounding board that they can have to just
Yeah.
say like, hey, I'm new, like this is a patient that I had, like what can I
Mhm.
learn from this situation? Or, you know, what do I need to know about this type of thing
Yeah.
that I'm going to see a lot of. And I thought about offering kind of like a virtual like nurse residency for a whole bunch of labor and delivery nurses that, you know, all graduate at the same time and they can kind of join the program. So maybe that'll be my next, you know, venture, but I
That
haven't
sounds
really
like a
decided.
that sounds like a really useful thing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, given the things that you want to see change, what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a nurse?
Um, you are responsible for your education, and you are responsible to invest in yourself. You can't count on the hospital to give you continuing education. If you want to grow in your career, you have to seek that, and you have to be accountable to yourself to do that. Um, if you want to go to a conference and the hospital doesn't pay, if you can swing it, go to it. You know, don't limit yourself just because the hospital isn't going to pay for, you know, a certification that you want or a program that you would like to attend. I have grown so much in my career. And I can tell you, my hospital has spent $0, you know, educating me on that.
Yeah,
And you know, in any direction that I wanted to go, I always thought legal nurse consulting was a really cool career, or option that I could do in nursing, and kind of ended up here on accident. But I did that and I invested in myself, and then I was able to start my own business doing that. And from there, you know, I might go in another direction, but if I choose to do that, it's because I've invested in myself, and I,
exactly.
you know, have sought out those opportunities. You're not going to be given those opportunities in a hospital.
Yeah, yeah. It's at the end of the day, it really is not their responsibility to grow you,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. Um, their responsibility is probably to have adequate, not adequate, well-trained and proficient staff and enough of it and stuff like that. But growing you and making you fit for advancement in your own career is not their responsibility.
right.
Right. So, what would you say though is your greatest achievement so far? Because you've done a few things.
Um, I think just the impact that I've had on people. I have a binder that I have kept, from all the cards that I've gotten from patients. I was nominated for a Daisy Award a couple times.
Yeah,
Um, and our managers on our unit, when I was a new nurse, they used to go and do, like purposeful rounding on all of our postpartum
yeah,
patients. And anytime, um, a patient would mention me, they would send me an email, and I printed all of those emails. So I have a whole binder that I look through that kind of reminds me my impact that I've made. And I think that, you know, that is my biggest accomplishment, is just kind of leaving my patients in a better place. And some of like the nicest letters that I've gotten have been, for patients that I cared for that had a really bad outcome.
yeah,
And I think that, you know, when you're able to give that kind of care to somebody on that kind of a day, and they still have like really great things to say about their nurse, that that to me is, you know,
you can't
a
beat
great
that.
accomplishment. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. You can't beat that. And what a way to document your career. Actually, other people having other people actually documenting your career as you're going. So it sounds it's almost like a journal, you know, that other
Yeah.
people have written in your daily life. That's huge. That's fantastic. It really is fantastic. But what do you do for self-care? Because what you have described, the kinds of areas that you gravitate to really take a lot out of
Mhm.
you. So what do you do to care for you?
Um, I have learned that one of the most important things you can do for self-care is saying no. And when you say no to things that you don't want to do, you can say yes to things that fill you up. And when you're saying yes to something you don't want to do, you are, um, taking that time from something that is important to you, whether it's your family, um, it's your kids, it's, you know, a hobby. So saying no to the things you want to say no to, and yes to the things that fill you up. That's important for self-care.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because saying no to saying yes to the things you actually don't want to do, it's not really bring you satisfaction. It brings you angst.
Yeah. And resentment.
Yes. Indeed, indeed. Angst and resentment. So if you though could describe, I noticed that I know nurses without, you know, someone telling me they're a nurse, I know they're a nurse. Very often, more times than not, I am correct that person is a nurse. But I don't even know, I don't often know exactly what I see, what makes me know that for sure. I've been trying to collect these words and I'm asking nurses if you could describe in one word what the most essential quality of a nurse is to you, what would that be?
I think flexibility is pretty important.
Yeah.
Um, I
Mm-hmm.
think that pivoting, like if you're able to be like, okay, this isn't where I saw this going, but like you're able to flex and to move into a different direction. That's really important to be flexible in your time management, to be flexible in your um diagnosis. You can't fall in love with one idea like, oh, I think this patient has this. Like you got to be
Mm-hmm.
flexible in
Mm-hmm.
in what's going on. And I think that makes a really savvy nurse to be able to flex their time, their
Yeah. Yeah.
intelligence.
That's a huge one, actually. That's a huge one. And I'm glad you expanded on that because very often when we think of flexibility, we think of the ability to be flexible in a very narrow kind of way. But
Mhm.
you're talking about mental, emotional, all that kind of flexibility, which you need to be, ebb and flow. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned that definitely like in labor and delivery. If I'm caring for one patient in one room who, I know is inevitably like going to deliver and her baby probably won't make it. And then I have to
Mhm.
walk into the next room to a mom that is, giving birth to her first baby and is so incredibly happy. Like you got to be flexible with your emotions, with everything, and
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And I have mentioned this several times in several different conversations with people, but that talks about a very impactful poem that I know that was written by a nurse. It's called 30 Seconds on the Hallway.
Mhm.
And exactly what it talks about going from one area where one thing is happening to another area where a totally different thing is happening. And all you have is a hallway and 30 seconds to cross from one to the other. And in that time, so much of you has to change. Your
So much.
face, how you walk, your emotions. If you were crying, get those eyes not red, whatever. In those 30 seconds, you don't have time to do a whole other thing because this other room is waiting for you.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a really great poem. I love that one.
yeah. Uh, so it's almost my mantra, actually. I love it. So before we go, Savannah, any last words?
Even if you get into nursing and you realize maybe this isn't what I thought it was, there are so many different areas of nursing and different hallways that you can go down.
Yeah,
It's not just working in a hospital. I use my nursing knowledge outside of the hospital all the time. In different venues, whether it's, mentoring other, people in the healthcare field or like explaining to attorneys what happened in, a birth injury
yeah,
case. I use my nursing knowledge um, in not just the hospital. And if you find yourself in a position where you think nursing isn't for me, there's a lot of things you can do in nursing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe you
yeah,
just haven't found the right place.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That nursing license is a license. It's called a nursing license, and I guess that is the proper name for it. But it's a license to do anything
Hmm.
and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Savannah, thank you so very much for this conversation. I loved
Yeah.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.